I think we will face business decisions that every open source company faces. Do I only have an open source version of the product, or do I have an enterprise version of the product? Is it all just a software download model, or do we start offering some of it as a service?
What is required for you to sort of go big in terms of like the next financing round, or sort of like really become a dominant player, let's say, in that space, right? Like what would have to happen for that to materialize?
It's going from small and mid-sized customers to large customers, proving that the product can operate at scale in production environments for critical infrastructure. Proving that, we operate at scale, getting customers in production for a long enough period of time where the next time you go do one of these podcasts, it's not with me, it's with one of my customers.
The Cloud Frontier podcast is brought to you by Simplyblock. In this bi-weekly podcast, we explore cloud infrastructure startups, founder journeys, and discuss cutting-edge cloud technologies. Join us as we uncover the latest innovations shaping the future of cloud computing. So welcome everyone, yet another episode of Cloud Frontier podcast. Today our guest, Marc Austin from Hedgehog. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, thanks for having me, Rob.
My pleasure. And, obviously we've spoken before a couple times, but please introduce yourself to the audience. Please let us know what Hedgehog does, what do you do at Hedgehog, and let's take it from there.
Yeah, so I'm Marc Austin. I am CEO and co-founder of Hedgehog. So Hedgehog is AI cloud network software. We make it possible for cloud builders to run AI cloud networks with the same user experience as the big three, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, with high performance networking that meets the requirements for AI workloads, and do it at lower cost with open networking and full automation. So we generally are in the business of helping everybody else network the same way that hyperscalers, the big three, network.
Wow. So obviously you're in the space AI that's, the space of AI that's very hot these days. Was it the trigger to start a company, or like how did you decide to start a company?
I started the company after spending about 6 years at Cisco, and I was in a strategy role and a go-to-market role for their mass scale infrastructure group. So really serving their top 60 largest customers. And that included hyperscalers as well as telecom service providers and data center infrastructure providers. We started the company really with the thesis that, hey, look, everybody should be able to network the same way that Amazon or Microsoft or Google does, so that they can build and operate their own distributed cloud infrastructure. So we had a vision from the beginning that there would be distributed cloud infrastructure strategies employed by developers and enterprises. We had a market hypothesis that AI would drive a lot of greenfield infrastructure. There's other use cases as well. And so that's how we started the company. And then, 6 months after we started the company, we realized that our market hypothesis on AI driving greenfield infrastructure was accurate. In fact, if anything, we underestimated the impact of it.
Right. And so who are your target customers, right? Like who are the people building AI, let's say, outside of public clouds? Are those, enterprises? Are those just also other cloud providers? Like who's the target audience?
It's cloud builders. So it's anybody who is making the decision to gain control over their own infrastructure for lower cost and more control of their compute environment and more control of their data. So control of data and data privacy in AI is super important. So a good example is Luminar. So Luminar they make LiDAR sensors for Mercedes-Benz and Volvo. These are lasers that are embedded in the vehicle, and they have a software development team building Sentinel, which is a computer vision application that makes sense out of that LiDAR data. So it detects objects in the road, classifies objects, and generates a picture of road conditions that it hands off to the vehicle navigation systems. So Luminar was a key factor in Mercedes-Benz gaining level 3 autonomous driving approval in the United States ahead of Tesla. To train that Sentinel model, they need access to their, LiDAR data, which is, it's private data. And they need GPUs. It's not a huge GPU environment. It's not like an LLM. But and their L40 GPUs are what they're using. So they looked at renting those GPUs from AWS on a 3-year reserve commit, which is the best price you're going to get from Amazon. And then they compared that to the cost of just buying GPU servers from Lambda Labs, right, which are manufactured by Supermicro. So they determined that, hey, we can recover our CapEx in 6 months of a 36-month AWS contract, meaning AWS is 6 times more expensive than just owning their own GPUs. So they bought the servers, they bought some white box switches from Celestica, and then they got stuck. And the reason they got stuck is they don't have any network engineers. They have a really good DevOps team. A guy by the name of Florian Berchtold leads that team. They have a very mature best practice, GitOps process for deploying and managing workloads on AWS. But they had to go figure out, okay, how do I do data center networking? And in the course of that, Florian found Hedgehog, came to our website, clicked the download button, and I got a notice, talked to him for maybe 30 minutes. I happened to be at AWS reInvent during that first conversation, and he ran our virtual lab the next day and got unstuck. So he's still a DevOps manager, still with the same skills, same tools, same processes, but he's able to run his own AI cloud network with Hedgehog.
Wow, that's a cool story, and really explains, I think, how people sort of can come across Hedgehog. And so I understood then that you sort of would see yourself as a complement to let's say to a public clouds, right? So people would still use public clouds for, let's say, a variety of their workloads, but then when they want to indeed run AI with more sort of control over it, they would extend into their own data center, and that's where your solution sort of comes into
Correct.
play.
Yeah, I use the term distributed cloud. It's a term that Google uses as well. But in this Luminar example, right, they're using public cloud, AWS, for a variety of workloads. They have a GitOps process around that. They made a decision to build a private cloud for AI training for their Sentinel model. And then that model deploys to the data edge, right? So when we talk about edge compute, in this case, the edge compute is a car. Right, there are GPUs running in the trunks of those cars where the Sentinel model runs. So we think, and that's where the inference happens, right? Is in the car at the data edge. So the combination of those 3 things, public cloud, private cloud, edge compute, is what we generally refer to as distributed cloud infrastructure.
That sounds pretty amazing. And so you started the company. Did you start it yourself, or you have a co-founder?
Yeah, I got a couple of co-founders. So Mike Dvorkin is my co-founder and CTO. So Mike was also at Cisco. I was trying to develop a Cisco strategy and make an acquisition for the company. I just couldn't find a company in the space. But in the course of doing that, started collaborating with Mike. He was a distinguished engineer in the data center business unit at Cisco. So he was previously a co-founder or chief scientist at NCMA, which Cisco bought back in, I think it was 2013. That's now Cisco Application-Centric Infrastructure. That's Cisco's, primary data center automation platform. So really, in a large part, what we're doing is reinventing ACI to be modern, cloud native, and designed for this kind of distributed cloud infrastructure strategy, and built for a user like Florian, right, who's grown up on public cloud, understands public cloud concepts, doesn't really need to or want to, become a Cisco certified engineer for data center networking.
Right, and so you guys obviously have a lot of experience. I think you're also not the first time founder, right? So how was I understand you guys raised some VC funding. How was the process for you? Because I typically speak to more like first time founders, and obviously that's quite a journey to do it first time. But with your experience, I guess it was different.
This is the third company I've founded, and then I've been on the executive team at a number of startups. And same thing with Mike. So we've been around the block. And I'm also an angel investor. So, our first check really came from Kirby Winfield at Ascend. And Kirby and I had been collaborating together on, deal flow here in Seattle for, probably a couple of years. We were meeting like monthly just to refer deals to each other. I like infrastructure, obviously, doing a job. I was looking for really IoT applications and infrastructure deals. And that's because I'd gotten to Cisco through their acquisition of Jasper, which is the world's leading cellular IoT connectivity platform. So in that Luminar case we were talking about, there's a Jasper SIM in those cars that connects those cars to the internet and enables things like Sentinel software downloads, for example. So anyway, Kirby wrote the first check. Mike and I both invested, kind of had a small angel network here in Seattle. And then Ashmeet Sadana at Engineering Capital led our pre-seed round. So Ashmeet's been an awesome investment partner. He's on our board. He's got a background in infrastructure, right? He was a senior executive at VMware many years ago, and just makes, really early stage bets. In our case, it was, a couple bald guys and a PowerPoint and an idea.
So it was really at the idea stage. You didn't have early product. You didn't have an MVP.
Correct. Yeah. I'd say we were probably a little bit lucky in that regard. But it's also just sort of a function of having been in the startup business for, I guess I've been doing it 35 years now, something like that.
Now, obviously, I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to sort of understand, right? Because, otherwise there's a lot of founders that having to talk to like 100 VCs, and sort of show traction, show lots of sort of things, early revenues, early customers, right? And obviously in infrastructure space, it's not so easy to achieve, right? Without resources. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg problem sometimes.
Oh, for sure. I think every startup faces that. Look, we're not immune to that either, right? I've probably talked to hundreds of investors, and I guess what we had an advantage on is a pre-seed round that we could use to then hire a small engineering team, build the minimum viable product, take an adequate amount of time to do it right. So we sort of closed that round in November of 2022. I think October of 2023 was our Alpha 1 release. We did Alpha 7 in July and demonstrated that at Networking Field Day, which is really kind of where we really kind of first unveiled the product to the public. And the cool thing about it, though, is we've had design partners like Luminar, or a handful of other companies as well, who have sort of bought into our product vision, really early on, and worked with us as we rolled out, 7 releases of software. We got another release coming out beginning of October. Yeah, we're kind of at the stage now where we've got, a good handful of small and mid-sized customers, and some really, really large enterprises now that are giving us RFPs. So, we've got to do what everybody else has to do, which is go get those big deals, prove the unit economics, prove that the business can scale. And in our case, we just had the advantage of being capitalized well enough to get a really high quality product to market.
I wanted to zoom into those design partners, right? Because like obviously a lot of early founders are in that sort of situation where when they're on the lookout of those design partners. So I have two questions. So first is, I assume that most of your design partners sort of came through your network, right, or through your co-founders network, because you guys been around the block, as you said, for a while. So is that true? Like, or how did you get them actually?
I mean, our network, we have a small number of advisors. We don't really publicize them. Sometimes, founders will go sign up advisors who are maybe investors. I don't know. It lends credibility to the. We didn't really do that, but we did very early on have technical advisors. People at places like Microsoft or NVIDIA or, edge service providers who helped us with recruiting good engineers, reviewing designs, giving us good technical advice. But no, most of the design partners came to our website, right? We announced the company early. We announced the company before we had any kind of product. We never did the stealth thing. So we announced at Open Compute Project Global Summit 2022. There's a banner right behind me over here from that. It's out of date now because it's kind of, our messaging has evolved a bit.
Right.
But and we put a website out, and then people just started coming to the website. At first we didn't have the download button because we didn't have any product. But we just talked to lots and lots and lots of prospective customers. And at first, the customer profile and the requirements for the product were, pretty wide. And then, we had to kind of whittle it down. So for example, like one of our first prospective design partners was a national research platform, basically academic cloud compute. For doing research on things like AI sounds great and everything, but one, I mean, they're never really going to evolve to be a paying customer. And two, a lot of the features they wanted were experimental features, right?
Right.
So you kind of have to be pretty specific on the ideal customer profile that you want, right? And that's why I keep telling the Florian Luminar story over and over again, right? Training AI, deploying AI inference at the edge, making the decision to run their own infrastructure for cost and control of their data, DevOps skill set, cloud user experience. It forces us to design the product with a cloud UX that looks and feels like AWS. So yeah, it's getting those design partners in. And look, in that Luminar case, like I said, they're a mid-sized company. It's not a huge deal financially, but it's a huge deal use case wise, because it's the exact use case we want to address. An ideal customer profile and user persona, exactly what we want. So it's having I'd say having a hypothesis on that ideal customer profile, the user profile, and where you think your product's going to fit, and then really leaning into that. And of course, that ICP needs to be sort of the tip of a really big iceberg of a lot more companies investing in AI infrastructure.
That's a really good one. I think that the takeaway here is really be selective with your design partners as well, right? If you have that sort of privilege of selecting those, but that sort of means that you didn't really have to convince them to sort of become your design partner. It's just, what I understand is that the sort of a problem or the sort of the excitement about your product was big enough that they just were willing to sort of try it out. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is that we're an open source company, right? We incorporate a number of open source projects into the product, and then there's a Hedgehog project on GitHub, right? So if you're an open source company, you have to be open, right? So pretty much anybody who comes to hedgehog.cloud and clicks the download button and fills out the form, just agrees to the terms of use, gets a free download of the software and can evaluate it and start, using it. And when that happens, we set up a Slack channel. They get access really to right now our whole engineering team, and we do that very intentionally so that we have an open dialogue with that design partner, and they can stay a design partner forever, which means that they're just evaluating the software or just using the open source. Yeah. Our goal as a company is to get them into a production deployment, right, where they're buying a subscription from us, and we're giving them an SLA and making sure that their project's successful.
So I understand then that mostly you're planning to basically monetize mostly through providing support and sort of services around production, right? Or are there any sort of different versions as well of the software, or is it planned?
Right now, there's just one version of software. It's what you see is what you get on our website, and the documentation's there, the repo's there. So that's our current plan.
Right. And in the future, do you see, do you think there might be a challenge of sort of monetizing that? Because obviously that's what a lot of open source companies are sometimes struggling with, right? Like where they sort of like have a great adoption, but then it's not easy to monetize. How do you see it for yourself?
Well, look, where we play, it's like critical infrastructure, right? So if you have an issue with your cloud network, it's going to have a pretty big impact on your workloads in your business. So most customers want that SLA. That said, as we're getting into some larger deals, we have customers wanting us to accelerate our roadmap, and in some cases have features that are very important to them. And so for sure, I think we will face business decisions that every open source company faces, right? Which is, okay, do I only have an open source version of the product, or do I have an enterprise version of the product? Is, all the source code open, or is, some of it premium? And is it all just a software download model, or do we start offering some of it as a service?
Right.
So what we have right now is Hedgehog Open Network Fabric. It enables all the servers in your data center location to talk to each other efficiently, right? And the customers we have today then sort of kind of struggle with configuring their firewall and related technology for ingress and egress and load balancing and security policies. So that's kind of the next phase of our product development, is on Hedgehog Service Gateway, where we address those problems of transit, ingress, egress, load balancing, security policies. And, that becomes location specific. So yeah, I mean, there's an opportunity to operate that as a service for customers who want it, but we're not there yet. And what we're really focused on is just making our customers successful.
Right. So what I hear, your roadmap is quite packed, but as you said, I think at the moment it's still a matter of really focus and figuring out the I guess the right repeatability as well in the market, right, or in the customer profile. Yeah,
and I think just keeping things simple, right? You don't have to get really fancy with the business model and the unit economics as an early stage company. What you need to do is just focus on making your customers successful. And in our case, I mean, customers are pretty happy to give us subscription contracts because we give them really good product and really good service.
Makes sense. That's absolutely a correct answer, I guess. And hopefully a lot of other companies could also just say that. And what do you think though? What is required for you to sort of go big, right? To go big in terms of the next financing round, or sort of really become a dominant player, let's say, in that space, right? What do you think? What would have to happen for that to materialize?
Well, it's just scaling, right? It's going from small and mid-sized customers to large customers, proving that the product can operate at scale in, production environments for critical infrastructure. So, and it's addressing different market segments. So we talked about AI, but there are other, market segments that have really big, traditional compute infrastructure requirements, like telecommunications or banking or SaaS companies, right? I think that's like SaaS this is kind of an interesting one, right? It's like there's a whole bunch of like highly valued SaaS companies that aren't going to continue to grow their way to an IPO. Like eventually they have to start optimizing costs.
Yeah.
And they can do that with by addressing not just OpEx. It can't just, fire your whole team.
Right.
But optimizing your infrastructure expense, reduce your cost of goods sold and increase your gross profit margins. Anyway, so yeah, traction in specific verticals, larger deals, larger contract sizes, proving that, we operate at scale, getting customers in production for a long enough period of time where the next time you go do one of these podcasts, it's not with me, it's with one of my customers.
Right. And you're in you mentioned, let's say, SaaS companies, right? And some other verticals. And how do you see that those effects of sort of public cloud migration or sort of public cloud adoption? Like, do you see that in any way as a sort of tailwind or headwind for you? Like how does it affect your sort of market? Because obviously more and more things are in public clouds, but is it also the case there's just more and more things are also distributed? How do you see that?
All boats rise. I mean, I think everybody can agree that the world is going to consume more and more cloud infrastructure, and it's going to be distributed, right? That AI inference use case. If you don't believe the cost or control argument on training workloads, you can at least believe the inference requirement for edge compute, right? That said, not every workload on the planet has migrated to public cloud, right? So there's an existing market for, data center network infrastructure that's like $22 billion a year, growing at a 5.5% compound annual growth rate, CAGR. And you can compare that to AI cloud networking, which really NVIDIA has defined and owned.
Right.
And in their Q4 earnings call, they announced $13 billion in networking ARR, up from $10 billion the year prior.
Wow. Yep.
Or the quarter prior. Sorry. So that's pretty huge, quarter over quarter sequential growth. And quote Jensen correctly, I think it was less than half of that is from cloud service providers, meaning people other than the big three are buying AI network infrastructure from NVIDIA.
Right.
So, and then you can look at forecasts, like Deloro has some forecasts out, right? And so like in AI, you're kind of segmenting the network into back end, which is where GPUs talk to each other, which is primarily where NVIDIA plays today. So that's, they're projecting that to be $80 billion in network spend over the next 5 years. And front end networks, which is really kind of unaddressed at this point. It's how do you apply that cloud UX that we do, right? To a GPU cluster, so that you have the same cloud UX to get data in and out of it, use your data platform, et cetera. And I think Deloro's projection on that is $100 billion over the next 5 years. So my point is that yes, the big three will continue to grow. Startups in particular, we use AWS, right? Startups in particular should use public cloud infrastructure where it's convenient, gets you up and operating quickly.
What do you use AWS for internal development? Or?
Yeah, no, I mean we eat our own dog food. I think it's just some auxiliary applications. Anyway, the point is that all those boats will rise, right? $1 trillion accelerated compute infrastructure, build out, is pretty material. There's plenty of market opportunity there.
Yeah, very, very clear. And since you're very close, obviously, to the AI space, like what is your take on AI? How is this market going to evolve? So you obviously talked a lot about inference. So I would assume you believe that this is going to become a bigger topic over time. But what are your thoughts? And just be bold.
Yeah, well, first off, I'd say that like the term AI, right, like most terms in technology, sort of evolves from a technical definition into a market definition, right? So that market definition has sort of expanded to encompass a variety of machine learning applications. So that Luminar computer vision application is a good example. 3-4 years ago, I probably wouldn't have called it AI, but you can kind of call it AI today. So the first thing I would say is that the market for AI and the opportunity to add value to our lives extends beyond large language models, right? Like autonomous driving. Think about it. Not that long ago, we all thought, hey, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And then all of a sudden people have kind of forgotten about it as they're using ChatGPT to write their term paper, right? So there will be a variety of use cases with a variety of models. And I think the big three will continue to invest in trying to own the LLM space, because what it really represents is sort of search 2.0, right? It's the opportunity to sort of break up the Google monopoly on how people find information. But I think enterprises are going to have a whole lot of other problems that they need to solve beyond chatbots that enable them to lay off customer service representatives, which honestly, personally, I'm kind of bearish on that use case. Like, I'm very loyal to Alaska Airlines specifically because I get to talk to a real person whenever I need to when I'm flying. I think there's value in that. But anyway, my point is that enterprises will experiment with a variety of models. Most of them will be open source. They'll be pre-trained. They will run them on premise so that they have access to their proprietary data. I have a friend, he's CEO of an aerospace company. He asked me, so where's the IP in AI? Sure. And I'm like, well, you already have it. It's your data. And in his case, he's got 20 years of like flight testing data, right? Right. That's very proprietary and very sensitive, and just needs to, experiment with models with secure private access to that data, and eventually, and do that with retrieval augmented generation, probably initially, RAG. And then once he's got a model that he likes, fine tune it. And then, the end result of all that should be an AI application that you can then deploy to the data edge. And that data edge is going to vary with every enterprise. It may be a mobile environment like a car or an airplane, or it could be a fixed environment like a factory floor or a retail location. So, I guess that's my outlook for AI, right? Is it's just a continuum, right? And yeah. I told you I was in this IoT business before, right? They're not separate things. Right. Right. We knew this when we were working with people like Tesla, right? That the connectivity in the car is just a means to an end. It's collecting data that then you use to, train a model that then gets deployed into the vehicle that enables a particular automated function, in that case, autonomous driving. And so the best applications will come from proprietary data sets. And those proprietary data sets are, in many cases, will be from, data that's being generated from new kinds of connected devices.
Right. So I think I have a similar view. I think the big asset is what you already have, the infrastructure you already have, the data you already have, and AI is just an add-on to it. That's why actually a lot of large companies will be like big winners of AI. And even when we look at the big three cloud providers, right, they also see AI as just propeller of their growth, right? And on the other hand, though, I think there will be some winners of just pure AI game, right? Like maybe some vector database companies, maybe, like large language models companies. Obviously, I mean, OpenAI is already a big winner, right? But I think it's going to be a much harder thing to do than just sort of leverage AI to keep doing what you've been doing, just much better, much more efficiently, right?
I think so. I just think there's a very, like, as an investor, I don't think I would invest in a company that's building some sort of niche vertical application that's just using ChatGPT and paying ChatGPT, token prices, because that's not a very good business.
Yeah, and I think a majority of the businesses like around AI has been doing that more or less, right? And of course, there's always a hope that they will sort of find their niche and keep evolving. But it's a high risk investment, right? Or it's a big bet. I think that's very clear.
There'll be a couple of them that emerge, right? Like, look, I've been in, like I said, I've been in tech for a long time. Like if I think back to the late 90s, right, when I first got started in internet retail and internet search, you just look at social media. How many thousands of social media startups were there before you eventually had Facebook?
Right.
Somebody breaks out.
Plenty. And maybe last question, let's say on Hedgehog and your business, like what is the biggest challenge right now, or like what is the biggest priority for you right now? Like what is the biggest thing that you're focusing on right now at the company?
It's winning big customer contracts, doing that with partners, right? So our partners are hardware device manufacturers, so people making data center switches where our software runs, and the silicon that's in those switches, and then solution providers who kind of do all the stuff you got to do to actually run your own infrastructure, right? Rack, stack, wire, install, turn it on. That kind of stuff. So building that ecosystem of partners, because there's no way we can scale to as many customers that we want to serve and in as many geographies that we want to serve just by ourselves. And so, right now it's accelerating quite nicely, actually. Like, I think I rescheduled this 3 times. I'm sorry. But it's because we've been busy with stuff like that.
That's always a good sign, right? That's always a good sign. That there are bigger priorities than going on a podcast.
And I'd say, but this podcast is important, right? Because this sort of falls into that content marketing bucket for me. And right now it's founder-led sales, right? I'm doing sales, marketing, and CEO stuff. So, next year we're going to need to start investing more in content marketing like this, so that more people become aware of Hedgehog, right? So thank you for having me on the show.
No, you're welcome. But like before we drop off, and obviously it's a pleasure to hear your story and really your interesting insights on the market. Way beyond also just networking. So I have those 2 traditional closing questions, and the first question is, what is the most valuable resource that sort of help you shape the view of let's say cloud infrastructure or AI or the space you're sort of in? And it can be a person, it can be a book, a podcast, tweet, whatnot.
Well, look, I think for me, having a really strong technical co-founder with Mike has been a huge asset, right? I mean, look, I've done a variety of things throughout my career, and I'm better on the business end of things than I am writing software. I fired myself as a software engineer a long time ago. So, but, I just have the luxury of having a co-founder who understands how legacy data center networking has been designed and deployed and works, right? And has that perspective on how to make it better and more modern and more cloud native and usable by a new generation of people who just have a different perspective on how infrastructure should work. It should be in the cloud. It should look like cloud. That's been a huge resource. And when we do that, right, when we make all this super complex stuff that is legacy data center networking. Really simple, so that it's nearly as convenient for a developer to deploy their workload wherever they want to deploy it as it is today on the big three. It's hugely valuable.
That's a great answer, actually, and I've already had it before, so I think that's sort of like a repeating pattern, and I think it's a great sign also that you guys really believe in each other and trust each other, right? So I think it's a really also great sign for like everyone, for customers, for investors, that you actually stay your co-founder as that resource. And the last question is, what is the most exciting thing that you sort of see happening in cloud infrastructure space, right? And obviously you can be biased, but you can say AI as well. But just what is that you really like get excited about a lot these days?
I've been using this as a tagline. I don't know if it's the best tagline in the world, but AI needs a new network. Hedgehog is the AI network, and so when you see how GPU clouds get built, like NVIDIA DGX Cloud, for example, right? Like it's different than the way general purpose cloud compute gets built. Mm-hmm. I mentioned that if in general purpose computing, you've sort of got one network, right? In AI, you've kind of got three. You have your back-end GPU network, right, whose sole job is just to enable GPUs to talk to each other, share memory, and execute training and fine-tuning workloads without creating congestion or losing effective bandwidth, because those directly impact job completion time. So NVIDIA's done a great job there. Now there's an opportunity to sort of democratize that, put it on Ethernet. There's a thing called the Ultra Ethernet Consortium that we work with on that, so that now you can have options on how you procure your GPU backend network. You have the front end AI network, which is really this cloud user experience that we're talking about. And if you think about it, like the majority of AI infrastructure that's been procured to date has been for single tenants. Mm-hmm. People like OpenAI, where they're just, give me all the GPUs available in this data center building. Give me the keys. I have access to all of it. So single tenant model where you don't need a multi-tenant front end AI network. Well, when that evolves into enterprise adoption, you're going to have multiple, corporate tenants for infrastructure. And within any one of those corporate entities, let's say it's private AI cloud, you're going to have multiple development teams, right? So that multi-tenancy becomes a business requirement. We meet that requirement with our virtual private cloud user experience. And then storage networks, which sometimes get combined with the front end, but you talked about data platforms being really important in AI. They are, right? And they have network requirements of their own. Yeah. In that storage network.
We know a little bit about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, the point is that in all of this AI hype, infrastructure is, to date, infrastructure companies are the folks who really benefit from that this tidal wave that's happening. And the network matters a lot, right? If you just look at NVIDIA's numbers, it's like a third of the cost of AI cloud infrastructure.
Right.
And it has a significant impact on your time to market when you're training and fine tuning, and the cost, right? Because time is money in the world of AI cloud infrastructure, and so the network has a pretty material impact on that. So yes, all of that is super exciting because it's all new. Everybody's learning. And whenever you have big market transitions like that, it creates really big opportunities to go solve those problems, do a good job of it, make your customers happy, and then rinse and repeat.
Thank you, Marc. It was great having you on this podcast. Is there anything else you'd like to share with the audience? Anything else people would like to know? Where can they find you? Are you coming to reInvent again? Please let us know.
So hedgehog.cloud. Go to hedgehog.cloud. You'll see a download button. Click that. Download the software. Get on Slack with the team. collaborate with us. We want to hear, more about your use case, why you might be interested in gaining control of your cloud infrastructure at lower cost, and how we help you do that.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Marc. It was great having you, and have a fun, building. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed our discussion. Cloud Frontier is brought to you by Simplyblock, an intelligent database storage orchestrator. Get more IAPS and lower latency for your databases in the cloud. Visit our website at simplyblock.io for more information.